No wizards.
I know, right? So I saw this article I was catching up on newspapers and saw this article in the real estate section about what's called ADUs, accessory dwelling units in the city of Chicago. And it's something that that we're doing here in Chicago as a way to create more affordable housing as opposed to rent control. And I have pigeons out of my balcony. Pigeons. Anyway, they're distracting me. Sorry. So I thought it would be something kind of cool to talk about because I think it could be brilliant. It's a pilot program right now, and if you can, what it basically is allowing owners to do in designated neighborhoods is create a coach house or an in-law unit, what we have previously called an in-law unit, and many properties, of course, already have in-law units, which means that it's basically a unit that was done without permits, so it's not a legal unit. This ordinance will allow those units to become legal. So I thought that's a very cool thing and a window of opportunity for owners to pursue that. Wes, you got your beanie copter on again today.
Yep. It's my thing.
And Terrence, what happened to your gym? You're not in the gym anymore.
You know what? I just noticed that my background's going away.
You're just kind of floating in space.
I'm floating in the middle of nowhere. I got to put that back. I got to see what happened.
Oh well, that's okay. Change adds variety, the spice of life, right?
There you go.
So I was kind of curious, Terrence, about the financing implications. Now, I was reading the ordinance, and it looks like the city is giving grants up to $35,000. I should maybe pull up that page. But I'm wondering.
Well, to be clear, that's the financial incentives are only if you're doing, to my knowledge, that's only if you're doing like low to moderate income housing, if you're participating in the programs that for lower income housing. So if you're not participating in those programs, I don't believe there's any grant money for it.
What? Say that again. What?
I think you were distracted by the pigeons again. No, I was saying, to be clear, the grant money, as far as I know, is only for people participating in the low to moderate income housing programs. So if you're building the unit to use for one of the city's program, like I said, lower income housing programs, then there were grants available. If you're just wanting to build an extra unit on your place and rent it out, or for yourself or your family, there's no grant money involved, to my knowledge.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you take the grant money, then you have to there's income qualifications and whatnot, right? Is that what you're saying?
No, well, not just income qualifications for yourself. For you're building an ADU to rent to a low to moderate income individual through the city's program.
Oh, okay. Oh, I gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. But
yeah. I didn't want to tease everybody to think, if you want to add a unit to your
well, but the point is that if you're willing to rent to, if you're willing to do that, then
sure. But that's a big if. Yeah.
It is a big if, and you know what, I'm going to put the ordinance up, because as I read it, it looks like you have to agree to 30 years. You have to for properties. Okay.
Right.
So Must be legally restricted, affordable at 60%, so.
That's, yeah, 30 years is a, that's a long
That's a long
time
time.
to
Well, you know,
commit
it
to.
kind of reminds me back in the, I
That's
think.
like
this was
HUD
back-
money for building a building, yeah.
Well, I was gonna say back in the 80s, right? The HUD was doing that, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's
I
why
don't-
like presidential towers and some of those like big properties were built using money for that. But of course, then they got in trouble for not.
Following the guidelines.
Right. But yeah, I think if I were an individual, yeah, that seems like a high price to pay for the grant.
But
if
no,
you're
here it
committing to
says the
30 years.
ADU lending program will be available to households.
Low and moderate income homeowners.
Yeah, well, it's a little, anyway, it's a little vague, right? But,
Yeah.
so, but you can add an ADU without doing that, but.
Sure.
And Terrence, I guess.
Which I think is probably the bigger deal for our clientele.
Yeah, I'm just looking to see what the areas are, because it said in the article. All right, that it would.
The aldermen are the ones kind of choosing.
So
to
this is
participate in the
actually,
program.
this goes up, this is actually right where I live, right here. This is Devon Avenue. Here's the river.
Yeah, that's the north zone.
Here's Peterson. I mean, it covers all the way, here's the river all the way down to Belmont. And this is, looks like Diversey, yeah.
Mhm.
So
And that's just the one zone.
Yeah.
that's just the one zone. So it's covering a lot of territory.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay. I mean, that's very generous. Okay. Let's see. What about the Northwest side? Not so much. Huh. That's really
They're trying to get them expanded.
right. This is a pilot program.
Yeah, and the aldermen have to participate in it. So it's the aldermen where those zones are that are the ones that are wanting the program. So, but I think if it goes well, they'll.
So this is the west side. This is Holman over to Costner, and the ship canal up to the Eisenhower. So this is be Lawndale, basically, right? That'd be Lawndale. Interesting. You would have thought that would have been a larger area. I mean,
Well, again, it's the aldermen. So it's
Ah.
the aldermen that are choosing to participate. So
yeah.
it's not like an overriding thing where the city is saying we want it to go in these areas. The individual aldermen are the ones choosing to participate.
No, this map isn't coming up. All right. Oh, here we go. Okay. So this is the south side. So where is this? This is the Dan Ryan here. This is 87th Street. This is Cicero. I can't see because we're in the way here. All right. Wait. This is, so this would be west of UC here. Because this is King Drive. So this must be the UC campus over here.
So it's about like Washington Park and Inglewood.
Yeah. Okay. Huh. Interesting. Well, anyway, so it's a pilot program, and presumably, if it's successful, it'll, they're going to expand it. But yeah, interesting. Okay, so for properties with 1 to 4 units, the property owner can add 1 coach house or conversion unit, meaning like a basement or an attic. For properties with 5 or more units, coach houses are not permitted, but the property owner can create up to 33% more units. But if they do that, if they're adding more than 2 units, then they have to abide by these. They have to have 1 unit that's affordable.
No, I think I think it's more than 1, isn't it?
Well, for properties with 2 or more conversion units, every other unit must be affordable.
Every other unit.
Yeah, every other unit. So if you're building
So if they're building 10 extra, then 5 of them have to participate in the program.
Correct. Well, then yeah, I mean, that would have to be like a housing complex to put in 10,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, it would have had to have already been whatever 33%. So it would have already had to have been like a 30-unit building.
Yeah.
But I think for most of the people we're talking to, most of our clientele, it's going to be, this is a way for them to, just add a flat to their building or do a small coach house or do something to add,
income. Legal income.
Yeah, income, but also
income that
what they're
they can
trying to
declare.
push. Well, what they're trying to push too is a way, multi-generational housing, density. I mean, I'm in a urban planning file, and like density is everything, and in rescuing the city. So, and that's why other cities around the country have done this, and have done it very successfully, and it's been great in cities where costs have gotten high, like in Seattle, for instance. Seattle has been doing this program for a couple of years now. Portland did it. Vancouver, there's been several, but they've been really successful at, for instance, like the parents might move to the coach house in the back, a new coach house, an ADU, and the kids stay in the front building, or might even take the front building or 2 or 3 units in the front, when instead of like moving out of the area, instead of moving out of the city for affordability. Also a way to keep even of the younger generations, to keep them around too, but just a way to make the property more affordable, even if the homeowner's staying in the home where they are, but it can keep them there in the property longer. Some of this stuff has been really successful. Germany had a really big program to where they gave grants and money to, if you built multi-generational housing, instead of just building a house, if you built like, I would say a 2-flat, but they're almost like 2 houses combined, or an upstairs and a house that's upstairs with a lower level, kind of almost single family home as well, to where they can keep the parents there. So they had a big push for that, and it's been really successful, and been helping. And it's also kept, Germany is really expensive in a lot of areas, and it's also kept them from moving away to Italy and other places where the older generations just had to go to live on their retirement. But anyway, I've been really excited about it. I think the ADU programs will be really good for neighborhoods. I think not just for the multi-generational purposes, but just the density alone will make a big difference in keeping people in the neighborhoods, but also there's going to be more restaurants, more stores, more options for people when the density increases. And I don't know, I'm really excited about it. I think it gives some great options too.
Well, it's an issue like in neighborhood like my neighborhood, Lincoln Square. It's become an issue because so many of the 2-flats are being deconverted into a single family home, and we've lost so many units in that neighborhood. And so this is a way to create some of that without having to go through rent control, which has been proven, I think, to be a pretty unsuccessful way to address the issue. And I think, I mean, I know, Wes, you and I see so many multi-family buildings, 2-3 flats, that they've taken the basement or they've taken an attic and they put a unit in there. Particularly a lot of these were done post World War II, when there was a housing crisis, a housing shortage, when when the troops came back from the war, they needed a place to live, and they created some of these neighborhoods, like out on the Northwest side. So many of these neighborhoods have added, in-law units, we call them in-law units, that were put in to address the housing shortage. And according to this ordinance, I guess this is the first time since that they changed the zoning in 1957 to disallow all that. I'm not sure what the thinking was back in 1957, but
part of it was the city had more density than they could handle then. I mean, we've lost more than half of that density. But also people were adding them not up to code. They were it was substandard housing is what was being created, which also brings up the point that although this does create a path to legalization of some of those units, they're still going to have to meet the requirements and meet code. So a lot of people will have to, if they want to go through that process to legalize these units, they're going to have to, for many of them, many of them are fine, but many of them are going to have to be.
Well, that's actually a good thing. I mean, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely a good thing. And I mean, previously to this ordinance going in, I mean, 5 years ago, if somebody said, well, how can I make this a legal unit? I'm like, forget it. You can't. It's not happening. Right. and Terrence, to your point, and lenders wouldn't consider that income because it's not a legal unit.
Right.
Well, the interesting thing is going to be now with the zoning, because even with, people can do, let's say, a cash out refinance and do what they want with the money, put the money into the unit and then work on legalizing it. But the interesting thing is going to be renovation loans and how that's going to work, because with a renovation loan, the zoning already has to be changed. It has to be zoned as X in order for the lender to be able to do the loan. So if it's zoned as illegal too, and a person wants to finance in, let's say, adding an additional unit, the zoning would have to have been changed prior to doing the loan. So if someone already, that would be, for example, let's say a new buyer going into it. But if someone already owns it and wants to put some money into it, to work on the legalization, adding another unit, they'd have to do a cash out refinance and obviously use the money for whatever they would like to use it for.
Well, so a client of mine is actually the attorney for the city who actually wrote the ordinance. And we talked about this just a little bit, and I don't know for sure, but my impression was that it's not, the zoning itself won't be changed. It will have an allowable, like a variance basically in it. So they wouldn't have to get the zoning changed. They would have to show that they got that variance for this. Well, that may be something that the lenders have to adapt to, because, it's a new thing. So I don't know, but it sounds like you'll be able to get the loans on the property for that, because they'll be able to show that you have to apply to do this. And then if you get the approval, and I don't know if you saw that right now, they're only doing like 2 units per block per year right now. So you have to be like, you can't get that if 2 people on the block have already gotten the permit for that. But I think if you show that you got the variance for this, that you should be able to work with the lender on it. That's my understanding anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, the ordinance does say that the zoning has to allow, it has to be a residential zoning. You can't go to a business.
But he's saying, like, if it's zoned for 3 flats and you're adding a 4th.
Oh, right.
That you would have to get this, you might have to get the zoning changed. I believe that you wouldn't have to change the zoning to show that you have the variance. You just get
a variance.
Yeah, right. For that unit. They're also, I asked her about, what a lot of these other cities are doing, like Seattle is, the West Coast. Chicago's always been really difficult to do prefab housing because of how our code works, partly because Chicago's always been the home of all of the unions, of all of the trade unions, and they don't like, the plumbers union and the electric union and the, carpenters union, they don't like prefab housing. So it's been difficult, but the city is working on getting approved vendors for, in other words, you could just order a granny flat for the backyard that fits in a standard Chicago lot that's already fully approved by the city, and you could just have it delivered and plopped on there and be ready to go.
Yeah, we actually, I'm on the advisory board at Roosevelt for the Real Estate Institute. We actually had a Fogelson forum on that, talking about that very thing. That I think those guys are are here in Chicago experimenting with that. It's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah. So my client was telling me with this particular program too, they're trying to get some pre-approved ADU prefab builders or units that are part of the program. So that would be really make it really easy for people to say, I'll take the, unit B and just have it delivered and a crane plops it in. That would be great.
Well, do you see that there, Terrence, that there'd be any issue in terms of resale or because of would the financing be difficult on a property like this if a buyer,
Unless guidelines change, because again, like I was speaking of with the renovation loans, the zoning has to be changed. The zoning itself is what is scrutinized. So unless guidelines change because of this program that the city is implementing, then there's going to be difficulties with both purchases and resales, because I mean, sure, you can have another unit, but it's just like it is now. You have a 2-flat with an illegal third. Your financing is based on it being zoned as a 2-flat, a 2-unit. So, things would have to change because again, it's strictly based on the zoning right now.
You know what? I'll ask my client about that to see if she knows what they're doing to address that.
Well, I guess if you're in an area where let's say you own a 2-flat, but the zoning will allow 3 units and you put in a 3rd unit, then it wouldn't be an issue. But what you're saying is if you're in an area that only allows up to 2 units, and you put in
it's the property itself. So they would just have to change the zoning itself. Would have to be changed before financing can happen.
Well, I wonder if that would happen though at the time that they apply for this program to make it a legal unit. I mean, they wouldn't.
That's what I'm curious about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll ask.
I mean, they wouldn't change the whole.
That's being addressed.
They wouldn't change the whole area, maybe, but like Wes said, this one property perhaps would get a variance.
Yeah.
And would
Yeah,
that?
they must be addressing it in some way, because otherwise nobody could finance any of these. So it doesn't, and that doesn't address what the city, if it wouldn't, that wouldn't address what the city is trying to accomplish with this. So I would think that they would have to be doing something, but I'll find out what it is, how they're getting around that or doing it, if they're giving it spot zoning for it or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be interesting. Maybe similar to the way they're implementing the spot approvals for FHA financing.
Yeah. Interesting. So Terrence, what can you tell us about mortgages this week? What are the interest rates doing?
They're sitting pretty. They're the last couple of days of last week and even today, things are not looking all that great, but they're still looking good. I mean, again, I look at it in grand scheme of things. Over the last, 6-8 months, they're holding steady.
That's great.
So, we had like I said, last week, we had a period of a couple of days that we got flooded with refinances just because things dipped for a little bit. And they're starting to tick back up. I mean, again, when I say tick back up, I don't mean they're going up to 5s and 6s and 7s, but, whereas they could have been a couple of weeks ago 2.5, they could be 2.875 now, which is still awesome.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. No, it's fun. So again, this is definitely the time it's still the time for people that, bought in the last couple of years to look at refinancing. It is, it's free money. It really is.
Great. That's great. Well, that's great. So, all right. Well, we're coming up on 25 minutes. So we're going to wrap this up. I'm going to post the link for the city site on my Facebook page. In fact, it's already there. If you want to dig into the ordinance more completely, it's the link is there. If you have any questions or if we can be of assistance in any way, don't hesitate to reach out. We're always here to help in any way that we can. In the meantime, everybody have a good week. Bye for now.
Have a good day. Bye.
Take care, guys. See you soon.